It begins quietly, not with thunder, not with grand declarations, but with a whisper, a soft wound unnoticed. A child stares through the foggy window of his childhood home, watching the rain hit the ground like tiny drum beats of forgotten questions. He asks himself, "Am I loved? Am I safe? Does anyone see me?" No answer comes. So the child learns to stop asking. This is not a story of villains and heroes. This is not about the cruelty of bad parents or the flaws of a broken society. It is such. The story of an immature adult begins long before adulthood ever arrives. It begins when the emotional soil of childhood is either watered or left to crack beneath neglect. Because before a person grows into a man or a woman, they are first an emotional being absorbing everything. A child does not analyze, they absorb. And if that absorption is mostly confusion, invalidation, rejection, or fear, they begin to form their world on trembling legs. And yet those legs still try to walk because life moves on. But emotional development, emotional maturity that can freeze in time. An immature adult is not someone who is unintelligent, nor are they always visibly dysfunctional. Money-old gobes, they raise families. They smile at parties and hold intelligent conversations. But deep beneath that surface is a hidden child trapped in time, still waiting for the love, clarity, or safety they never received. This is where the complexity of the immature adult begins. You see, emotional maturity isn't about age. It's about integration, about whether the adult has been able to face the emotional ghosts that still whisper from their past. But for the immature adult, instead of facing those ghosts, they build walls, mechanisms, defenses. The first wall: blame. They blame others for their feelings, for their failures, for their pain. Because if someone else is at fault, then they don't have to feel the grief of their own unresolved wounds. They do or not have to sit with the inner child who was never taught how to regulate their emotions. Blame becomes their security blanket, a shield to avoid responsibility, not out of malice, but out of deep fear. The second wall: denial. They deny their needs, or they exaggerate them. They may say, "I don't need anyone," while secretly aching for connection, or they may constantly crave attention, validation, and reassurance, yet be unaware of the depth of their hunger. Denial is not conscious dishonesty. It is psychological survival. The child who once learned that showing emotion got them punished or ignored learns to shut off. Years later, they still don't know how to turn it back on. And so, the adult walks the world like an actor who never removes the costume. They play the role of the confident leader, the funny friend, the strong partner, while inside, the child still screams, "Please don't leave me. Please love me. Please don't make me feel small again." But no one hears it not abentem. This leads to the third wall: control. When we are not emotionally mature, we fear uncertainty. We cannot tolerate the discomfort of unpredictability. So, we try to control everything: conversations, relationships, outcomes. We interpret disagreement as abandonment. We interpret someone else's independence as rejection. The immature adult often seeks control not because they are power-hungry, but because they are terrified. And the terrifying thing is they don't know what they're terrified of. The roots lie buried too deep. This is why relationships become the mirror in which emotional immaturity is exposed. The romantic partner becomes the stage upon which every unmet childhood need begins to perform. Arguments are not just disagreements. They are reenactments of unhealed stories, of unresolved cries, of fears too old to name. You try to talk to them calmly, but they react like a wounded animal. You tell them how you feel, but they think you're attacking them. You ask for space, but they accuse you of abandonment. Because in their world, everything is still about survival. Love to the immature adult often feels like danger. Vulnerability feels like exposure. So instead of love, they may perform connection. They may give gifts, share laughs, create memories, but when emotional truth arrives, when hard conversations appear, they retreat, lash out, or break down. Because emotional maturity means being able to stay in discomfort, to stay in uncertainty, to stay connected when it's hard, not just when it's easy. But for the emotionally immature, staying was never modeled. This brings us to another tragic pattern: the idealization full cycle. The immature adult often sees others through extremes. At first, someone is perfect, an angel, a savior, a soulmate. But the moment that person disappoints them, sets a boundary, or behaves imperfectly, they become the enemy. Love turns to resentment. Admiration turns to rage. This is black and white thinking. The inability to hold complexity, the childlike need for certainty. In that emotional world, There is no space for nuance, because nuance requires maturity, and maturity requires integration. So where does this leave them? In a cycle. They seek intimacy, but fear closeness. They crave understanding, but avoid They want control, but end up feeling powerless. And the saddest part, most of them don't know any of this. They're not aware, because awareness is the final wall, the one that must be broken from within. No one can do it for them. And yet most will never try, because to become emotionally mature is to grieve. To grow is to feel. To evolve is to revisit the very moments they tried hardest to forget. And that is terrifying. So they continue on blaming, denying, controlling, idealizing, resenting, mistaking emotional reactions for emotional depth, mistaking independence for maturity, mistaking intelligence for growth. But growth isn't loud. It's quiet. It is crying alone in the car because you realize you hurt someone, and you don't know how to apologize. It's staying present during an argument, instead of shutting down. It's saying, I was wrong, and meaning it. It's choosing to understand, not just be understood. The psychology of an immature adult isn't about shame. It's about compassion. Because the truth is, every one of us carries some version of emotional immaturity. We were all children once. We all had needs that weren't met. We all built defenses that once kept us safe. But what once kept us safe is now what keeps us stuck. The difference is some of us choose to stop, to look back, to listen, to unravel the threads of our emotional DNA and ask, what am I still carrying that no longer belongs to me? That question is the beginning of maturity, and yet, it's only the beginning. True emotional maturity is not built through books, degrees, or social achievements. It is carved in silence, often through the painful work of self-confrontation. It requires courage not to conquer the world, but to sit alone with yourself and not flinch at what you find. The immature adult avoids this. They're in constant motion, always chasing something: attention, success, pleasure, distraction. Because stillness feels like danger. It reminds them of what's unresolved. And yet, stillness is the very medicine they need. Most immature adults were not given emotional language as children. No one taught them how to say, I'm scared, or I feel unloved, or I need to talk. So, instead, they learned indirect languages: sarcasm, withdrawal, anger, deflection. They confuse vulnerability with weakness. They protect their egos as if it's their life. And in some sense it is because that ego is all they've ever known. But ego is not identity. It is armor. And when you live your whole life armored, you never really feel the sun. So they grow old, but not up. They gain knowledge, but not insight. They build relationships, but not intimacy. Because intimacy demands presence, honesty, and all of which the emotionally immature adult struggles with. Not because they are incapable, but because they are Emotional maturity is a practice, a discipline, a choice made over and over again. To slow down when you want to react fast. To stay soft when everything in you wants to harden. To be quiet when your pride wants to scream. And perhaps most of all, to listen. Not just to others, but to yourself. To the parts of you you've silenced, avoided, or buried. Listening is the beginning of healing, but it's also the beginning of loss. Because as we mature, we lose parts of our former selves. We lose the justifications, the illusions, the comforting lies we used to believe. We lose the idea that we were always right, that others were always wrong, that life owed us understanding without us doing the work to be understandable. The immature adult often clings to these illusions, not out of malice, but because letting go feels like death. And in a way, it is the death of the old self, the small self, the guarded self. And few are willing to die like that because it's not a death that's celebrated. There are no trophies, no applause, just you, your shadow, and the quiet work of integration. This is why so many emotionally immature adults surround themselves with people who enable them, partners who don't challenge them, friends who laugh off their worst behavior, environments where growth isn't expected. Because to be seen clearly is to risk rejection, and to be called out is to risk collapse. Their entire identity is built like a fragile house of cards, and one strong gust of self-awareness can bring the whole thing down. But some do let it fall. Some wake up one morning and realize, this isn't working. I'm hurting people. I'm stuck in cycles. I feel empty. That moment of reckoning is sacred. It's terrifying, but sacred. Because from there, something new can begin. Something honest. Something free. Growth doesn't always look noble. Sometimes it looks like crying in therapy. Sometimes it looks like journaling through shame.